Hello. For those of you who don't know, my name is Micah Rose. This is a video that I've needed to make for a very long time, and I've been kind of putting it off, mostly due to nervousness about recording myself. I don't really like making videos. So this is multiple testimonies that are going to be kind of grouped up together. Things that I've needed to share for a while, things that I know are very important for me to share, and I've been feeling prompted to share every day, and I've been feeling very convicted. A little bit about myself. I was raised under a Christian mother. She did her very best to teach me in the right way I should go, regardless of how my life has gone. I do believe that everything she did set me up on my way to coming back to Christ. Even though I was always taken to church, I wouldn't say that I had a relationship with God, not in a deeper sense. I would say my very first testimony in my life was when I was around 8 or 9 years old. I had warts on my hands, and I was very subconscious about it. I would walk down the hallways at school like this, so no one would see my hands, even though everybody already knew I had warts on my hands. I remember going to the doctor and then trying to freeze them off, and it didn't work. My mom would get medicine on it for me, it didn't work. Nothing seemed to really work. One night I prayed to God to remove the warts off of my hands, and after that they were just gone. I don't remember the time frame of how long it took. It was probably within a week, but they were just gone, and I've never had warts on my hands ever since. So fast forwarding to growing up, as I got older, there's more worldly influences that come into your life, being at school, watching TV, listening to music, friends. Worldly influences are literally all around us, all around our children, all the time. You can't really fully shield them from that. By the time I was a teenager, I was already in sexual immorality. This will lead on to another testimony in my life. By the time I was 17, I was pregnant with my first daughter, and I had her when I was 18. That's a whole other testimony in itself, and I'm going to kind of skip over some of that. After I had my first daughter, I was in a relationship with someone for 9 years. We were not surrendered to God at all. Regardless of how much I tried to make that relationship better, there was just always hindrances for obvious reasons. In that relationship, I had 2 more daughters. After my second daughter was born, I wanted to start going to church again, mainly because of how dysfunctional and unstable that relationship was. Me and my mom started going to this church. The experience of going there was just being surrounded by materialism, hypocrisy, tradition. There was a lot of red flags that at that time I was in a way kind of ignoring because I wanted to be in the church. I didn't have a true relationship with God, and I was just trying to figure out the right way to go about being a Christian. I don't feel it was Holy Spirit led for me to be there. The pastor of that church was very materialistic. He highly stressed this in his sermons, in his lifestyle. He had a very overpriced suit and shoe store right next to the church. This church gave me a negative view of tithes and offerings and just money with churches in general. They would count the money in front of everyone And then they would proceed to tell them, hey, we need more money and we know you guys got it, so let's make it happen. I tried to find pictures of this church from the time period I was there, and the only one I could find was one of my daughter holding money for offerings. They would have these celebrations for their elders in the church. Their main way of celebrating that person and showing their appreciation was giving them money, and they would pretty much pressure you into giving money to show your appreciation, and you would feel ashamed if you didn't. I didn't have money, but I had craft supplies and mad skills, so I made fans. I think the very last thing for me that really made me not want to go to that church anymore was one day the sermon was about how you're supposed to present yourself when you go to church physically. There was a man who came that day, and he wasn't wearing the best clothes. He had shaggy hair, shaggy beard, and the pastor looked at that man straight in the face as he was preaching and said, "You don't come to church looking and smelling like a billy goat. You don't come to church looking and smelling like a billy goat." So that was kind of like the cherry on top for me. I stopped going to that church not long after. And then I had a bad taste in my mouth about churches. That's something I'm actually still healing about myself, is not overthinking or being overly skeptical or overanalyzing. It's been really nice, but not becoming a judgmental person when I go to a church. I have a lot of notes here I'm going to be looking at. So after that, I definitely was moving further away from God. I kind of got to where I was doubting anything that had to do with the Bible. And you'll see a lot of people say, if you turned away from God because of some people at church, then you were never really His. And that is true in a way, but saying that isn't going to help anybody come closer to God either. Obviously, if someone is trying to get close to God and they're not already close to God, they're already unsure, they're already feeling skeptical, and then you go to a church like that, it's only going to make them more skeptical. It's obvious. So I don't think it's right to shame someone for having church hurt. How about you be the light and you show them how a Christian is really supposed to be. You show them what it's like to be like Jesus, to love like Jesus, to guide them like Jesus would, instead of looking down on them. And as time goes on, I have a hardened heart towards God. Now I'm pregnant with my third daughter. It's time for me to have her. I'm in labor. And this was in February 2015. I had labored all day at home. By the time I got to the hospital, I was already at a 9 centimeter. At this point in my life, even though this was my third baby, I had zero real information about childbirth and how it should be. I was just going with the flow of the societal norms of what childbirth is. I'm at 9 centimeters. I've never had a baby without an epidural before, and I'm scared, even though I've already made it this far and all I have to do is push the baby out at this point. I'm scared out of my mind to do that. I'm begging the nurses for an epidural. They're saying, we can't do it, you're already at 9 centimeters. They changed their mind for some reason. I 100% believe that God allowed this to happen. I got the epidural. I had her around 7 p.m. That night I had a headache all night, and I didn't think anything of it. I just had a baby, my body's stressed, I have a headache. I wake up the next day, I still have a headache, the day goes on, still got a headache. So I told the nurses, hey, I have this headache, it will not go away. They checked me out and they told me I had a spinal fluid leak. The spinal fluid leak is when the spinal fluid is leaking out of your spinal cord. So You pretend this pin is your body, this is your head. When you have a spinal fluid leak, the spinal fluid is not going around your brain, it's going down. So they decided to give me a blood patch. A blood patch is when they take blood out of your arm and they shoot it up into your spinal cord to make up for the lost fluid. Hopefully the hole seals up. If I didn't cover that part, when you have a spinal fluid leak, where they shock a needle into your spinal cord is where it's when the hole doesn't seal and the fluid leaks out of your body. So then my head feels better, I think everything's fine, and I go home. And when I get up the next morning, I realize that I still have this headache. After you have a baby at the hospital, they give you pain pills. I had hydrocodone, which is Vicodin, 5/500. I was taking those for my head. Hopefully my spinal fluid leak will just heal. Within a few days, it wasn't getting better, so the pain is intensifying. Like I told you, here's your head. If you don't have any fluid, it's going down. So I have to stay in bed like this at all times, so the fluid will be even throughout my body and around my brain. Anytime I go up like this, the pain intensifies. When I go to the bathroom, I'm literally running to the bathroom and running back as fast as I can. When I'm sitting on the toilet, my head is pounding. I used to have a picture of it, but I can't find it. But my whole face was completely swollen, like I looked like a marshmallow. So we decide to go ahead and go to the hospital and see if they'll give me another blood patch. On the way there in the car, my head is just booming. I'm puking in the waiting room. They put me in a wheelchair. They take me to do tests on me. At one point, there was a male nurse in the room with me, and he came and he gave me some kind of liquid medicine. He told me that it was going to make the pain better, but literally as soon as he shot it into my arm, everything was just flashing, and I can't explain the kind of pain going on, and I screamed so loud. And I know that I scared him because the look on his face, and I never saw him again after that. I don't know why, but the hospital refused to give me another blood patch. It was kind of like, oh well, for you, go home and deal with it. If you die, you die. I went home, and I still had my pain pills from when I gave birth, and I was taking those. I was calling to find out if anybody would prescribe them for me again, because I was going to run out and I was in so much pain that I wanted them really bad. And I was waiting for a doctor to get back to me about that. So we're going to fast forward a few more days. And at this point, my head is hurting so bad that it does not matter if I'm sitting up or laying down. At this point, my head is just booming. And the best way I can describe this in a way that you could even kind of understand is just imagine 10 extremely strong, muscular men with baseball bats, and they're all banging you on the head at the same time. That's the only way I can describe that kind of pain. There's no way to describe it really, and I wouldn't wish it upon anyone ever. On day 7, on this day, I am laying in bed and I am crying all day, just crying. Around 7 p.m., I'm at my breaking point. I can't take it anymore, and I pray out loud to God. And I say, God, if you are real, please take this from me, and my life will be yours. It was like a challenge and a bargain and a big need for mercy all at the same time. And I didn't really think that anything would happen. I hoped something would happen, but I didn't expect that it really would happen. I woke up around midnight to go to the bathroom, and when I sat up, all the extreme, out of control, indescribable pain was gone. I had the mildest cerebral headache, and I was walking to the bathroom. I wasn't running, I was walking, and I thought, is this real? Is this real? So I walk back to bed and I go back to sleep. And when I get back up in the morning, it's real. It's really real. The pain is gone. And it was so crazy in my mind that I literally felt like I was going to die for 7 days, and then one prayer, and then it was just completely gone. It sounded so crazy that I did not tell anybody about it for probably over a year. I didn't tell anyone because I thought people would think I was crazy. And I called and asked them to cancel my medicine. And one kind of funny thing about it is anytime I would start to think that maybe it was just a coincidence, I would feel this throbbing starting back up in my head. And I was like, okay, never mind. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking that. At this point in my life, I'm like, God is real. I told God I'm going to give him my life. But did I fully 100%? No. I was still in a sexually immoral relationship. I was still unmarried. I was still sinning left and right. I was still definitely in the world and in my flesh. But after that experience is when my eyes were open to a lot of things, a lot of knowledge, a lot of understanding of how this world is working, what's going on behind the scenes. My whole mindset changed. My view on the world was completely different. It was really obvious to me that there's a spiritual war going on. And I understood why the world was in a fallen state. But I still very much struggled with sin and developing a closer relationship to God. There was still a lot I didn't understand. So this was back in 2015. Towards 2016 is when I was really getting tired of all the ups and downs in my relationship. There was a lot of manipulation and being treated ways that I didn't want to be treated. Towards the end of 2017, I ended that relationship. During that time when I ended that relationship, it was like a whole new stage in my life, and I was ready to just feel free and explore everything. Even things I did not need to explore spiritually. At that point, I was longing for happiness. I was longing for real love. And because I had never really had that. I never had that person who truly, truly loved me, and that's what I wanted. And I started seeing things online about, the law of attraction, manifestation, and that was interesting to me. And I started dabbling in that. I got into where I was always looking into astrology, I was doing birth charts, I was doing solfeggio, binaural beats. I started collecting crystals. I started listening to Abraham Hicks, and you know who that is. She was definitely channeling and speaking with demons. Very big on the law of attraction and manifestation and living the best life. I started getting into yoga. There was a lot of spiritual things I started getting into. But what kind of spirits? What kind of spirits? At this point, I was ignoring any kind of discernment or conviction, because in the New Age world, if you're feeling worried or scared, which they want to call it fear, they pretty much conviction and discernment is fear. And if you're feeling fear, then you need to grow out of it. You're used to your conditionings of the past, especially if you were brought up Christian. You were just conditioned to be fearful of this worldly stuff, when truly it's not the truth. God doesn't give us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. And God's rules for us are not fear-mongering. God sets rules for us to protect us, just like with the sexual immorality. If I would have listened and cared about how God feels about sexual immorality and why God tries to guard us from it, it would have saved me tons of heartache. It would have saved me tons of drama. God sets rules to protect us, not only in the physical realm, in our emotions, but in the spiritual realm and demonic oppression. Towards the end of 2017, I started talking to this guy named Walter Rose. We actually were already friends on Facebook back in 2016, because in January 2016, I decided to go vegan, and we met each other actually in a vegan group, and I added a whole bunch of vegans on my Facebook page, and he was one of them. So towards the end of 2017, after this relationship was over, this mysterious Walter Rose started talking to me. I didn't think anything of it at first, just the guy being kind of flirty. But then, he started showing much more interest, and I didn't think that would go anywhere because I lived in Missouri, he lived in Florida, but it was going somewhere. Wally was also very much into New Age ideologies and practices, and more so than I was. And I was starting to learn more from him. At this point, I am scared to even be in a relationship, and I was very intimidated. In my mind, he was like everything I wanted. He was into all this New Age stuff. He was an artist. He went to festivals. He seemed like he just had such a fun, exciting life. And I was just a boring mom. When you're a single mom of 3, it's really easy to feel like nobody would be interested in you. At the beginning of 2018, I drove to Florida to meet Wally. He was very sweet, very romantic, and kind and thoughtful, and I was just head over heels. He came back to Missouri with me. This is when a lot of trouble started. Wally became my idol. I had many idols, of course, but Wally was like my biggest idol. An idol is anything you put above God, put more faith in, put more trust in, put more time, energy above God. As I'm learning more from Wally and admiring his confidence, his free spirit, he introduces me to mushrooms and LSD. At this point in my life, I had only done marijuana. Since the age of 16, I was smoking marijuana. I never tried anything else. A lot of people believe that it brings healing and it will help you raise up to your higher self, help you ascend, kill your ego. You cannot kill your ego. There's no such thing as killing your ego. Your ego is your soul. You're made of body, soul, and spirit. Your soul is your emotions, your mind, your will. You can't kill it. It's always going to be a part of you. But you can be oppressed within your soul. You can be demonically oppressed. Yeah, you can form better ideologies. You can humble yourself in your mind, in your soul, but you can't kill your ego. It's your flesh. You can submit your flesh to God, but you're not going to completely kill your flesh. Your flesh will only be completely killed when you leave this body. One thing I remember most about when I first started doing psychedelics is I would look in the mirror at myself, and I was not looking at myself. Looking in my eyes would make my face look old, tired, evil. And I just remember not wanting to look at myself in the mirror at all. I wonder why. So at this point, my life was just spiraling out of control. My relationships were spiraling out of control. My mom hated that I was smoking marijuana. She didn't know I was doing psychedelics. She just found out I was smoking marijuana. She never knew. I had just gotten out of a bad relationship and was still living with my mom. And it had gotten so bad with all the drama with Wally being there and him getting all the blame for my actions that I ended up taking him back to Florida. So here's another plot twist. I was pregnant. We spent the majority of my pregnancy having a long-distance relationship. So I was working like 6 days a week, delivering pizzas to make money to save up for our own place. Wally was working like crazy to save up, and we combined our money and got our own place together back in Missouri. So we got to spend the end of the pregnancy together, and we had our son at home. That was an amazing experience. There is so much more that was going on in my life that I'm going to address in my next video. My oldest daughter's dad, the daughter that I had when I was 18, her dad hates that I have a new boyfriend. In my next testimony video, you'll understand why. He had already had it out against me, and he was doing all kinds of false CPS reports. They never opened any cases against me. These are them. I finally received all of them a whole year after requesting them. I had my son in November of 2018, and in my court agreement with my oldest daughter's dad, he was supposed to claim her on odd numbered years on his taxes. I was supposed to claim her on even numbered years on my taxes. 2018 was an even numbered year. Come early 2019, when it was time to do taxes, he claimed her against the court order so he could get the money. My other two daughters' dad claimed them behind my back, even though he wasn't very helpful at the time. Since I just had my son, I couldn't work. I tried going back to work. My son would not take a bottle. My boyfriend at the time, Wally, would come to pick me up from the job I had. Him and the baby would be crying their eyes out because the baby didn't eat. So I had to stop working. Wally was the only one working. He was helping take care of my kids, paying for all the bills. So we were looking forward to the tax money to catch up on our bills so we wouldn't lose our place. Well, both dads took all the tax money and I wasn't able to pay bills. At the same point, since my oldest daughter's dad was so upset about me being in a new relationship, he was talking a bunch of stuff behind our backs to my daughter, and he was convincing her that it'd be best for him to have her instead of me. And she was starting to believe that. So she was very disrespectful towards me. She didn't want to be with me. And I was really starting to feel like she just, like it would be impossible for her to want to be with me at that point. So, with no money to catch up on our bills, we really didn't have an option of anywhere to go. I didn't have a good relationship with my mom anymore at that point due to all my worldly shenanigans. And Molly's mom offered for us to come to Florida. Since my daughter did not want to be with me, hated being with me, wanted to be with her dad so bad that she was begging to go live with him. He was always calling CPS trying to get my kids taken away, ultimately just to try to get her, not caring about the rest. So I decided maybe we should just go to Florida and let her go be with her dad since that's what she wants so bad, and maybe things will just work out later when she will realize that she wants to be with me and come back. He agreed to letting her come visit me in the summers, but that did not happen. But that's another story. We'll get there. Please watch number 2 because part 2 is going to be really good testimony. So we packed up and went to Florida. Not only was it a very scary experience, my grandma had just passed away, and that was sad because we didn't even have the best relationship at the time due to all the drama within my family. In the mountains, I had found a kitten, and this little guy ended up being a great way of therapy for me because I was just always sad. No matter how much I tried to be happy or pretended to be happy, I was sad. I really missed my daughter. Even my kids knew it, and they would always try to make me feel better. As time went on, I was just getting deeper and deeper into all of these New Age practices. I put a lot of emphasis on the moon cycle and full moons. I had a moon cycle dream board with an altar built under it, and my kids were participating. Thinking that you're going to ascend on these full moons and portals are opening. Probably are portals opening, but not in a good way. The more I formed my life around these ideologies, the more hectic my life got. I remember on full moons thinking that I was going to ascend, I was going to manifest, I was going to heal, all the above. But every time there was a full moon, me and Molly would be fighting like cats and dogs. There were so many times that we couldn't even remember what we were fighting about. We were just fighting. I was right, he was right, he was wrong, I was wrong. And we were fighting every full moon, every time. Our relationship was so ridiculously, demonically oppressed. There would be times where we would both be crying about how we felt like we shouldn't be together, but at the same time, we wanted to be together. We loved each other, but nothing was working. It was just constant battle. Looking back on it, it seems like we were just crazy. And what's really crazy about it is like there was nothing crazy like he's cheating, she's cheating, we're doing this and that behind each other's backs. It wasn't the typical drama within an ungodly relationship. It was just weird battles. This only caused me to want to try to manifest even more. This made me want to use the law of attraction even more. I wanted to make our relationship better. So then I learned about twin flames. If you know anything about twin flames, you know that it is the biggest recipe for a toxic relationship. I thought we were twin flames because we had that toxic relationship. If you don't know what a twin flame relationship is, if you Google it, that was my relationship. It's easy for anybody who's in a toxic relationship, an unstable relationship, a trauma-bound relationship to believe that they have a twin flame. I would like to add that even though we had all of these problems, Wally was the most trustworthy, supportive person. This pushed me to become obsessed with tarot. I started looking at twin flame tarots. I was looking at astrological sign tarot. It was always so spot on that it was just completely mind-blowing and unbelievable. I now know that that is because familiar spirits. This just dove me more down the rabbit hole of astrology. It was like, the more spiritual you think you are, the more morals you think you're developing, you're losing morals too. I was becoming so immodest in this time. I would just dress however I wanted to, and I didn't care who saw me. I felt like, oh, I'm comfortable, so it doesn't matter how everybody else feels about how I'm dressed. It doesn't matter if people are looking at me. That's their own problem. At this point, it was just, we're living our best life, our best stressed life. 2019 now, I'm getting really into crystals. We have a nice big crystal collection, a lot of crystals. I make little altars with them. We're always lighting up Palo Santo and sage in the house all day, every day, up in the corners, believing that it's clearing the energy. And I have this problem where if I've been doing a lot of repetitive motions with my hands or a lot of lifting for a long time at a job, when I go to sleep, my right hand goes numb, maybe a carpal tunnel issue, but it's painfully numb. It's not just I can't feel my hand, it's my hand is on fire, and the only way I can make it go away is if I get up and keep walking around, get my blood flowing, and then the pain goes away. But I lay down and it comes back after I fall asleep, over and over. There's even been times where my hand gets stuck and I can't move my fingers, and that hurts really bad. So I have all these crystals right next to my side of the bed. And at this point in my New Age journey, I was starting to hear some things because I was sleeping. Lay down, China. Lay down. As I'm laying there, it's pitch black in my room, and I hear, grab a crystal. And I'm like, okay, so my hand's hurting, I'll grab a crystal. And as soon as I reach over, I know exactly which crystal it is by the way it feels. And it's azaztulite. I had already looked up the azaztulite crystal. It's believed to be one of the strongest crystals for connecting with the spiritual realm. So I'm holding it, and the pain in my hand goes away. I am mind blown because nothing makes the pain in my hand go away. I have to get up and walk around. I can't sleep at night. I have to get up over and over. So I'm holding it, and I think, wow, I'm just going to hold this every night. Literally the day after I started using it, weird things were already happening, and this weird decoration that was on top of a cabinet fell down on my son's head. Of course, I didn't think anything of it at the time. So that's what I do. I start holding this crystal every night, and I never have pain. There was one time I woke up in pain, and that was only because I dropped the crystal. I picked it up, the pain was gone again. So this became my new thing. I was going to just have this crystal in my hand every night, and I even started carrying it around during the daytime. And I remember getting attached to it and getting upset if I couldn't find it. If I had left it somewhere, I would be upset. Since I had drawn this big attachment to this crystal, I started having what's called hypnagogia. If you were to Google this, you would have a scientific explanation of having hallucinations as you're falling asleep before you hit the REM stage. It's when you hear things, see things as you're falling asleep. This stone is opening me up to the spiritual realm. So I'm starting to think that I am developing spiritual gifts. I want to use them. I want to grow them. I start writing all of the things I heard inside this notebook. There was a lot of nonsense I heard, just a bunch of random chatter a lot of times. It just sounded like tons of people talking. And there was a lot of encouraging me to develop this gift. It's just page after page of stuff that I was hearing before I could even fall asleep. It got so bad that there was a time that I was walking at my job and I closed my eyes for a moment, just for a moment, and I started hearing a bunch of voices. One time during this hypnagogia, hearing audibly someone say, Narna. I could never figure out what Narna meant. I would look it up and you really can't find anything for the name Narna. But I found this one page of a book on some kind of website where the character's name was Narna. And as I read this one page, the description of this book, it was about a girl named Narna who was a forgotten goddess. And she fell in love with a centurion named Lucius. And the way this book was described, they kept reincarnating and running into each other and falling in love. Long story short, they were twin flames. And this was a book from like maybe the 1920s or something. I'll look it up and I'll add it to show you. But it was like mind-blowing to me, like, oh, I heard Narna, I look it up. This is pretty much a book about twin flames. Lucius was a centurion, and at that point, I'm like completely convinced that this book is about me and Wally, because Walter means leader of army. And what's really crazy is in this book, they have a son together, a baby boy, but while she was pregnant, they were separated. That's exactly what happened to me and Wally when I was pregnant with Zeffy. We weren't separated as in not together in a relationship, but like them in this book, we were physically separated. I was back in Missouri, he went back to Florida because there was so much drama going on in our lives, and I couldn't leave Missouri because of the court order for my oldest daughter, and he couldn't stay in Missouri because my family did not like him. So that just added fuel to the twin flame fire. So not only was I seeing a bunch of repetitive numbers literally all day, every day, 1111, 111, 222, 333, 444, 555, 1212, 1010, 1001. Now my ears are ringing all the time. This is another thing that people will tell you when you're developing spiritual gifts, if your ears are ringing. For some reason in my backyard, it was just so loud that I didn't even want to be out there anymore. It was just constantly raining. And I thought it was just me sensing something. Yeah, I was sensing something. I was sensing something alright. It all stopped when I gave my life back to Christ. It stopped. Thank God. Another thing about the crystal as this true light, Zeffy was only about a year old. Me and Wally had it, and we let him hold it. And he was like, and then he was like, hello? I'm getting goosebumps from this. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. It's just, it's horrifying. Me and Wally at the time were like, wow, that's so cool. And now I'm like, oh my gosh. By August 2020 is when I was starting to hit my breaking point. I mean, I had already been hitting my breaking point over and over and over, but at this point, it's like I'm questioning myself. Why is it that I'm trusting this law of attraction and it's supposed to be working and I'm supposed to be manifesting, but all I'm getting is crap all the time? I have these big highs where I think things are getting better, and then I hit these extreme lows that show me things are not getting better. I have to start looking at myself and considering that I may be completely wrong. I have to consider that the Bible is right, that Jesus is the truth, and I have to leave all these ways behind. That is a huge ego check, pride check, to have to consider that everything you want this world to be and everything you think this world is completely wrong. To think that you have to give up all of these things that you enjoy, and you're already conditioned to thinking that living the way the God of the Bible intends for us to live is boring. Because this whole world makes you believe that living in your flesh, living a sinful lifestyle, following your heart is fun, fulfilling, exciting, but it brings so much trouble, so much heartache, so much drama, so much trauma. The list could go on and on. I also started thinking back to my older testimonies, how God healed my hand when I was a child, how God was there for me when my second daughter had a hole in her heart, and I prayed and I prayed. For 6 weeks I had to wait for the result, and when we went back for the exam, it was gone. There was nothing there. Thinking about my third daughter's birth and the spinal fluid leak and how God miraculously healed me. And then I just completely shoved those back out of my memory so I can live in the world. At this point, I, in my mind, inwardly, very secretly, have a huge war in my mind, back and forth of, do I keep living how I want to live, or do I seek God? I'm still having all of this demonic activity with the hypnagogia, the numbers, the ears ringing, all the above. Now that I am internally obsessing over if I need to be seeking God, I'm starting to have different kinds of dreams. These dreams were warnings. The first one I had, I was up in the sky, up in space, and I was surrounded by all these beautiful clouds and stars, and it was just misty and beautiful. And I see these people, and their whole bodies were just a golden light, but they had a face. In the New Age movement, you are a light being. You are a star seed. And that's what these people were in the dream. And I thought they were so beautiful. And they were floating in a figure 8. And I joined them. I got in the figure 8 with them. And I was just admiring how beautiful they were. And then something in me felt like, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here. So I floated away, and then I woke up. And I wrote the dream down in this stupid book. And I just could not figure out that dream because I wanted it to be something positive, of course. Toxic positivity. As time went on, I had another dream, and it was a little ironic, because that day me and Wally were out in our yard working with our plants, and Wally almost poked out his left eye twice with sticks and stuff. And then that night, I had this dream. And in this dream, I'm floating up away from the ground, face down. My face is facing the ground, and I'm floating up real slow. And the ground is a wheat field. And I can see some little white flowers on the ground, but it's a wheat field. And the sky was misty, beautiful, cloudy. It was just beautiful. And I'm slowly floating up. And it was the most peaceful, amazing feeling I've ever felt in my life. It was just, I don't know how to explain that kind of peace I felt in that dream as I was floating above the wheat field. And that dream ended by me smacking my left eye on my headboard of my bed. You can imagine that this is my bed, and it was actually a futon at the time. There's wood here and wood here. My head would always be down here, but I'm not that tall. I don't need a lot of space. I never have my face all the way up on the wood. But that night, I woke up from that dream. I was floating in my dream. I woke up from smacking my left eye onto the wood on my bed. And it was so extremely painful. I don't know how on earth. When I told Wally about it, he was like, I think you were levitating. But I feel like that dream was a warning. Like, you're going to be left behind. You're missing it. You're missing the mark. You're gonna lose everything. I kept writing stuff in my little book, and I kept questioning and feeling more and more drawn to Jesus. And the very last thing I wrote in this book, the end of September, and the last thing I ever heard as I was falling asleep that I wrote down was, it's not about religion. God wants to be invited into your life. It's not about religion. God wants to be invited into your life. That's a message for everyone. And then not long after that, it says it there, on September 26th, I wrote the word atonement. I heard the word atonement. And since then, it was just, okay, I gotta figure out what I have to do to really invite God into my life. It takes so much humility and putting away your pride and what you want so much. I stopped listening to any tarot readings, which was really hard. There would be times I'd be frustrated and upset, and I would want to turn to tarot for answers, but I forced myself not to. At one point, Isaiah Saldivar just somehow popped up on my YouTube, probably because I was searching biblical things, and I started watching him, and I was like, whoa, these are the spiritual battles I'm dealing with. At that time, that's what he was talking about all the time, was spiritual warfare. And I'm like, wow, this is my problem. So I started listening to a lot of things Isaiah was talking about, and it completely resonated with what was going on in my life. So at this point, I was still smoking marijuana. We were literally growing it in our house. I didn't want to stop smoking marijuana. I was under the impression that it made me feel better and it made me less stressed out. I thought that it was making me feel happy. Now I know that that was definitely not the case. It was an illusion. I actually felt very dissociated from my body and things going on around me. I felt very sluggish and lethargic, and it was really hard for me to have energy to do anything. And of course, one might tell me that it had to do with the strain or the grade, but it was literally anything I smoked that made me feel that way. And Wally was very picky and particular about what marijuana we would have. At this point, I tried to talk to Wally about God, and he told me that he believed there are multiple ways to God, not just Jesus. And I remember just crying when he said that, and he just looked at me like I was kind of crazy. I'm still smoking marijuana, and in my mind, I think it's helping me be more open to the spiritual realm. It's going to help me connect to God more, but that's not the case. I start to feel a little convicted about doing it, but I still keep trying to convince myself that it's okay. God made this plant. It's totally normal to do this. God approves. At that point, Wally was working nights, and when he was gone at night, I would smoke just like any other time. We smoked like all day, every day. We were always high. I would be at my desk, and I would just feel this darkness behind me. Just this dark, creepy feeling behind me. And it really freaked me out because the whole time I'm doing all this New Age stuff, I never felt any kind of fear. I never felt any kind of darkness. And that's exactly how Satan works. When he has you where he wants you, he doesn't really mess with you like that. But when you start pursuing God and pursuing holiness and righteousness and living for God and turning back on all those demons sent your way, they start to attack you. Backtrack a little more. The very last time I did mushrooms, it felt so incredibly dark. It was never dark before. When I was in the world, it was just a good time. It was chill. When I started considering inviting God back into my life and giving my life to God 100%, but still straddling the line, toe dipped in the world, that last time I did mushrooms, it was so incredibly dark. I remember just wanting to lay on the floor and curl up in a ball and cry and pray and tell God I don't want to be high anymore. But I just put on a poker face and pretended everything was okay so I wouldn't mess up Wally's trip. But on the inside, I was screaming. After that moment, I was trying to stop smoking marijuana. As much as my mind was saying, hey, I need to stop, my body was saying, no, I want it. I don't care what anybody says, you can be addicted to marijuana. I was addicted to marijuana. If you can be addicted to food, you can be addicted to porn, you can be addicted to shopping, you can be addicted to literally anything. You can be addicted to marijuana. If you feel like you have to have it every day, if you feel like you have to have it multiple times a day, if you feel withdrawals, if you fear not having it, if you feel anxious not having it, if you feel overwhelmed not having it, if you feel like you need it to function, consider that you can be addicted to marijuana. Pray that addiction off of you. Pray against the spirit of addiction. So I'm praying to God, and I tell God, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to smoke anymore. All it took was for Wally to smoke the next day, and for me to smell it and just see him, for me to want to do it. And I thought, oh, that was all just in my mind. I'm just being paranoid and being silly. It's totally fine. Just let me smoke again. So I smoked. And after he left, it was just instant regret. That darkness was there again. That extreme fear and anxiety and paranoia that I never had before. Never. Smoking since I was 16 years old. At this point I was 29 years old. Completely surrounded by darkness. I go to my room in my bed. I want the door shut. I want a light on. I'm praying to God, saying I never want to do this again. There's marijuana plants growing in my room. My boyfriend is smoking it multiple times a day with me right there. I smell it almost everywhere you go down here. It's tempting. I pushed through it and did not smoke. And for about 3 days, I felt so out of it. My vision was blurry. I felt slow and lethargic. I felt like I was extremely high for 3 days, even though I hadn't smoked. And then after that, I just felt clear, and I never wanted it again. I don't like the smell of it anymore. I don't crave it when I see other people do it. Nothing. I've had dreams about smoking again, or someone offering it to me, and in my dream I'm like, wait, I don't smoke. Or I'll be like, I can't believe this person's offering this to me. Even in my dreams, I don't want it anymore. It's like the enemy is trying to trick me into wanting it in my dreams, and I'm still like, I don't want that. So I told Wally that I'm not smoking anymore, and he was just kind of like, oh, okay. He lost his smoking buddy. There'd be times where he'd be like trying to pass it to me, and I'm like, no, and he was just kind of like, oh, I forgot. And sometime later, he told me that just those moments, he was feeling conviction. I started having dreams about people that I realized that the connection with them was bringing demonic activity into my life. There was this one influencer that I followed on Facebook and was friends with him, and he was very deep in New Age and had thousands of followers, and I had a dream about him where he was just standing in front of me and his eyes were so creepy. I want to stay away from that guy. And I deleted him, and all this time later, that guy still has tried to reach out to me. This is the same guy that at one point I tried to ask him about Jesus. What did he think about Jesus? What do you think about the Bible? And he just left me on red. Anything else he would talk to me about but that he was talking about meeting these beings and opening portals and all kinds of stuff, but he won't talk about Jesus. Red flag. I'm listening to a lot of Christian content. I walked up the street to a thrift store and bought me a $1 Bible because unfortunately all the Bibles I had before my New Age stage, I don't know what happened to them. I left them in Missouri and they're just gone, I guess. I've been hiding everything I've been listening to so I don't offend Wally or cause any problems, because he believes there are multiple ways to God and he does not want to hear any of my Christian crap. I start to get a little bolder and I'm listening to these things out loud now and not caring if he hears it, and just hoping that maybe he'll pay attention a little bit. This causes more division. He hears these things and he's feeling judged and possibly trying to ignore conviction. At this point, I've decided, maybe me and him aren't supposed to be together. If I have to leave him, I will. And I tell him that. I tell him, I want to live my life for God, and if you're not going to go in this direction with me, then I guess we're just not meant to be together. And he agrees. So there comes a point where I'm collecting all the crystals, all the New Age books. There was this box full of witchcraft tools under our bed. It was for the divine masculine and for the divine feminine. It was a witchcraft set. There was actually 3 sets in there, just full of tools to do spells. And I never got around to using it because I always felt kind of weird about it, but it was sitting under our bed for probably a year. So I collected that and I had it all sitting in a box next to our front door, and I was planning to just throw it out and not say a word, just throw it out and deal with whatever rage happened. Before I could throw it out, Wally came home and he saw the box and he asked, why are all his crystals and his books in this box? And I told him I wanted to throw them out. He instantly was so angry with me. He was telling me, I got these crystals from people, this came from this person, that came from that person, why would you throw my stuff away? And if you're New Age, you also know the whole not feeling attached to people or things that they shove down your throat. Don't feel attached. Don't feel attached. And I said to him, if you're not attached to anything, why are you so attached to these crystals? So I wasn't allowed to throw them out, and they sat in our house longer. I did throw away my crystals, but we mysteriously woke up to a flat tire on our car in the morning. So at this point, I am just genuinely trying to seek God and live for God, and my boyfriend who I'm living with is not. We already have a baby together, and it's just straight division. So this is going to be the end of part 1, because what happens next is all intertwined into part 2. So I do hope you watch part 2 because it's a very, very big testimony, and it is why my faith with God has grown so immensely huge, and why I probably drive everybody crazy talking about God on Facebook, and why even my own family members have blocked me. God bless you. Thank you if you watched all of this, and thank you if you watch part 2.